Okay? Do you know who hires immigrant labor? Small employers. The fruit packer. The guy who runs a lawn service. The restaurant owner. I'm living in Humble, Texas, which is on the southern border. I mean, right, like, maybe 60 miles from the sea. All right, it's right near Intercontinental Airport. I'm in a city of maybe, I don't know, 20,000. I'm not sure how big Humble is. It's north of Houston. I would probably say that 1/3 of the population are immigrant labor. Whether they're illegal immigrants or legal immigrants, I don't know. But I mean, and that was true when I was born in California too. I mean, Spanish and English are sort of like, two sides of a coin for me. Because you grow up and you hear it all the time. All right? So why is he, immigration, cheap labor, and open borders? Yeah, if they're immigrants, then they're going to run and be cheaper than the citizen will. That's not the fault of the immigrant. I hope you understand that. If the immigrant is willing to work at Walmart, there's a minimum wage in the United States, but let's pretend, I don't really remember what it is anymore. Let's pretend it's $7 an hour. If it were legal for Walmart to hire somebody at less than $7 an hour who's an immigrant, why shouldn't they do that? That means that Walmart's prices will be lower. So I, who am a citizen, going to Walmart buying their products, well, then my products are lower. My products prices are lower. But if Walmart was only allowed to pay $8 an hour, let's say, and never to hire immigrants, only U.S. citizens, well, then wouldn't it have to charge higher prices to everybody? See, this is the problem. A lawnmower service, the guys that do your landscaping, chances are real good that they hire a lot of Spanish labor, a lot of Mexican labor, because a lot of Mexicans don't learn English. That's why we learned Spanish when I was growing up in California. Down here in Texas, everybody's pretty much bilingual. Not fluent necessarily, but we can understand Spanish when we hear it, and we can reply enough that they understand us. The same thing was true in Jerusalem. They spoke 3 languages in Jerusalem. Okay, Greek and Latin, and Aramaic, really. Hebrew was also spoken, but it was only when in connection with Bible. Okay? When you have a cosmopolitan place, honey, that's the way it works. Okay, so here's the problem. He's basically saying that immigrants are bad because there's amnesty, cheap labor, and open borders. And he's implying here that corporate patrons running both parties. It isn't the big corporations who benefit the most from immigrant labor, it's the small one. It's the mom and pop, the guy who's living in a ranch house that maybe costs $100,000, and instead of being somebody's employee, he's trying to run a lawn service, and so he might have 50 or 100 clients, and the only way he can have that many clients is if he hires immigrant labor, because they're willing to work for a lot lower. He can't hire a U.S. citizen to work at those rates and therefore create a business. That's why people don't do anything about immigration for 40, 50, 100, 200 years. We've had the problem that Donald Trump is talking about. It's not recent. We've had Mexicans crossing the border. We've had Canadians crossing the border. We've had everybody crossing the border since we became a country, and we were the first ones to leave our countries to come here. So Trump doesn't even understand. And of course, he couldn't have any of his hotels built without immigrant labor. It won't happen. The construction industry is at least gotta be 1/3 immigrant, mostly Spanish labor. probably half, but I'm guessing. It's got to be at least 1/3. And immigrant labor is how the economy of the southern half of the United States runs, period. I can't speak for the northern half that much, except that the Spanish population in Chicago is really high. Okay, so this guy, he doesn't understand. See, he doesn't understand taxes, he doesn't understand China, and he doesn't understand immigration and its role in keeping costs down for the rest of us. Okay, so let's go on with his stupidity, because it gets worse. Real immigration reform puts the needs of working people first, not wealthy globe-trotting donors. What? Does he have any idea what he's talking about? It isn't the big corporations who employ most of the immigrant labor. It's the little ones. Your big corporation is covered by so many regulations at the federal level, it can't really afford to employ immigrants. The closest it can do is like, with Microsoft and some of the others, is that they have to go hand in hand to Congress and ask for visas for H-1B and H-2B, which I'm against, by the way, because we already have enough people in this country who are qualified to do those jobs and actually do them better. But when it comes to, the so-called Mexican immigration, which is where he's going to focus his attention, he's dead wrong about wealthy globe-trotting donors. This is just bullshit language, okay? Because they don't employ immigrants. They don't. I mean, it's just, your canneries employ immigrant. See, immigrant labor means low physical labor. So if you're working in agriculture, like maybe Dole pineapple, of course that's not the right thing, but Dole and some of its products where it's got lots of huge farms will have immigrant labor on those farms, those kinds of companies. But you can't call them globe-trotting donors. You would be paying more at the grocery store if they didn't have immigrant labor picking the fruit, picking the cherries, picking the whatever it is that they put into their cans. All right, period. See, he's talking like this is all Democrat talk. This is conservative Democrat talk. This is your redneck Democrat who says that I don't have my job because some brown person took my job, and never mind that I wouldn't be picking tomatoes at that price like he is. It's his fault he's got a job and I don't. Yeah, and if you were willing to work at the same rate and for the same number of hours as he is, then you would have a job. See, that's the part of the story that Trump isn't telling you. So all the redneck guys who really, it's like a form of xenophobia. They're not thinking. He's just catering to this. And the worst part about it is that he himself is guilty of what he's accusing. If you're going to say this is bad and evil and wrong, then he's guilty because you can't build hotels. He made his money on the backs of immigrant labor too. Everybody does. It's a fact of life in the United States for at least the last 100 years, really the last 200 years. You had your waves of immigrants. First you had the whites, and now it's the brown people. We had different kinds of whites. We had Italians coming in as immigrants, and they started at the bottom. We had Greeks coming in as immigrants. They started at the bottom. We had, well, of course, the English were here first. I mean, come on. And then, of course, what about all that slave labor we imported? Oh, bloody hell. A nation without borders is not a nation. There must be a wall. Now, this is the quintessential stupidity of Donald Trump. The easiest way to know you shouldn't vote for him, right there highlighted in blue. To show you why, let's do United States map. There you go. Now, remember what he said? There must be a wall across the southern border. What's the southern border? Well, it depends on how you want to define it. Do you define it starting, see where my hand is in this map right up here? Do you want to define it as, see, because this is Ojai and, Baja and all that part of Mexico. Really dirty, by the way, okay, because I used to live right in here. Do you want to build the wall all around here? Okay? Is that the wall he wants to build? No, honey, there already is a bunch of checkpoints all along here. You can't even cross this line here. There's a bunch of custom stations that you have to. Okay, going back and forth. And then the same thing is true in all these places. Okay? Building a wall is not going to prevent whatever, what do you want to call it? Immigration illegally is occurring in there now. And why would you build a wall? Look at that distance. Do you know how much money would be spent? Oh, it's got to be what? 20, 30 billion dollars right here? Okay? Got to be that much. Because how high do you build it? What do you build it of? How do you keep it? How do you maintain it? So when I'm saying 20, 30 billion dollars, I'm saying, including the cost of maintenance, it might be much higher than that. Okay, so for the same 20 or 30 billion dollars, couldn't you come up with a better plan than building a wall that is what? Like the Maginot Line? Oh, that really helped France defend itself from Germany. Not. For Maginot Line, just go look it up. Maginot. Or how about the Great Wall of China? Yeah, that worked so long as we didn't have air cover. And what about trains? With the railroads? We got lots of trains coming in from Mexico, bringing freight. And the immigrants ride on the trains. What are you going to do? Stop them every 2.5 seconds? You can't build a wall and not let the trains through. I mean, what did this guy just? I think he's on crack. I really do. A nation without borders is not. See, this is a border. See, United States. Below that purple, that's Mexico. We already have borders. A nation without borders is not. See, we have this whole thing up here. That's a border. And this whole thing down there, that's a border. A nation without borders is not a nation. We have borders. The problem is not that we have borders. And we don't need a wall, which can't really work, to protect the borders.